You might have heard of this little game called Dragons Dogma 2. There's a lot of hype around it, and a lot of that hype is painting a picture of the game that I think is dangerous to people who aren't familiar with the series. I've already made videos on basically everything that you need to know, and if you know what Dragons Dogma is, you're familiar with the series, you want to play the game, you don't need to watch this video. Especially if you watched my most recent video where I talk about a lot of stuff, but I notice now that I talk about it from a perspective of I know what's going on, and I assume the people watching the video more or less know what's going on. And I do always try and put little notes in my videos of keep in mind that this might not be something for you. But so many people have reacted very positively to those warnings that I want to make a video just straight up addressing a lot of the stuff people are saying about Dragons Dogma 2 that is misleading in my opinion. A lot of that comes down to it's Skyrim but with better combat, or it's a dream game for Dungeons and Dragons fans, or the most realistic RPG ever made, or it's gonna be like Elden Ring. My Twitter timeline, comments, and especially TikToks. Plenty of people just claiming this game is great and talking about it when I don't think any of those comparisons really sell you on what the game is, and quite the contrary, if you go into this game with certain expectations like it's Skyrim but with good combat, you're going to be severely disappointed. And maybe instead of appreciating how unique and creative the vision behind Dragons Dogma 2 is, you're just going to be sad because of those expectations. So for as much as I'm really excited for Dragons Dogma 2, and I would like for you to experience it and enjoy the game like I expect I will, let's talk about all of the potential red flags that this game could have for you. I want to make it clear that I like pretty much everything that I'm going to talk about in this video. I think these are great choices, and that a lot of great video games tend to be very divisive. There's no right or wrong answer. That's why we have so many video games. And this isn't a video to temper expectations, because whenever I talk about any of these things, I just get more excited about the game. But instead to be purely informative about a lot of the misinformation I see online. So let's start with the Skyrim comparison. That one's the weirdest one and has some history to it. This comparison to Skyrim is extra funny because the original Dragon's Dogma was very heavily compared to Skyrim when it came out, and plenty of people would continuously say that it was Skyrim but worse. Those people, as time would show, were just people who didn't understand what Dragon's Dogma wanted to do. And Capcom themselves tried to distance themselves from that comparison, by the way. I think that the biggest difference between a Skyrim and Dragon's Dogma is that in Dragon's Dogma, you should never expect to sit across an NPC for 40 minutes while they talk at you. You shouldn't expect to be reading books and scrolls all the time. There is a story, there is a narrative, there might even be dialogue trees and important decisions. But everything I'm going to tell you in this video is based off of preview footage and my experience with the original Dragon's Dogma. I don't think you should expect this game to have several novels worth of lore in it. The experience is more organic, for lack of a better word. You walk around, you talk to people, things happen. When you reach places, they are just places. I don't expect big thundering drum sounds because you reached a new location. There's no real quest markers. There's not even little icons to indicate that an NPC has a quest to give you. You just have to walk up and talk to them. I guess you could say it's less gamey, less transparent in how it presents those systems, even if they do on the surface still contain quests, an open world, and dragons, I guess. Obviously the combat is very different, but of course the quests, how they develop, how you explore the world, everything about this game is very radically different from something like Skyrim, while both of them still being fantasy RPGs. And that same point about dialogue trees and exposition and lore should also tip you off that this is nothing to do with a lot of other Dungeons and Dragons style properties, which this is heavily inspired by, but not a Dungeons and Dragons game. Yes, you have a party of 4, but you're not going to be forging intimate bonds and deep relationships into the night like this is Baldur's Gate 3. Really, that party factors more into the main part of the game, which is combat. And that's where people like to compare it with Souls-likes and Elden Ring, which is again, something that the original had to deal with as well. When you just look at the game and you see stuff like animation-locked combat and stamina systems, you might be reminded of Dark Souls, but you shouldn't, primarily because of that party. Where combat in Dark Souls is more like a delicate duel, Dragon's Dogma, I think, goes more for an all-out brawl. That's where I like to compare it in some of its feel to Monster Hunter, which also has some of those staples that you encounter in Dark Souls, but it's more focused on big chaotic battles that are very dynamic, and where the group, the party, really influences how you decide to tackle any given scenario. And a lot of combat in this game is going to be taking down one big monster. You can scale on them, you can use different debuffs, different buffs, use the environment, find different ways to tackle that situation. But a lot of the other combat, not even needing to go back to Dragons Dogma 1, but just looking at preview footage for Dragons Dogma 2, are large mobs. You're a party of 4, and you might be fighting 8 or 9 goblins and a troll in the middle. And that sense of chaos as you improvise and find the best ways to deal with stuff is a big part of it, and it's very different to a Souls-like. Even Elden Ring, which increased mob density by a lot, in that game having 3 or 4 different enemies is very overwhelming, and that is not meant to be the case in Dragon's Dogma 2. That is meant to be relatively normal. At the end of the day, even if there is no multiplayer, by the way, 0 multiplayer, it's all AI-controlled companions, you're still a party of 4. So it'd be kind of pointless if they presented a meager goblin as a big threat, because it's not going to be. You're 4 people. Even bigger than all of that is that this is a class-based game. You choose a class, and that will limit what you can do. As much as there are pseudo-classes in something like Elden Ring or in Skyrim, the reality is everything is very flexible. You can just change what you're doing at any moment. And in Dragon's Dogma 2, while there is a jack-of-all-trades class, it comes with a lot of very heavy negatives to balance it. You are going to be playing a specific role in combat. If you choose to be the mage, if you choose to then become a sorcerer, you're not going to whack anybody over the head with a sword just because they got close to you. If you're a warrior, you're not going to be able to dash around and even wield daggers. So you have to commit to a certain playstyle in a way that is very like a class-based game. I guess we haven't had many games that do that recently, so like the weapons in Monster Hunter, I guess. So again, it's something that, yes, you can say that they are open-world games with a heavy emphasis on a combat system, but that doesn't mean that Elden Ring and Dragon's Dogma 2 are the same game because they have open worlds and dragons, I guess. Very similarly, it's important for you to keep in mind that a focus of this game, according to the developers, and I guess we should take their word for it, is exploration. Like I mentioned that NPCs don't have little quest markers above their heads to be like, hey, talk to me, I have something I need done. Very often you'll be sent in a direction, not to a location. You won't be told, hey, go to this location, here's the optimal path. You'll be told, it's somewhere to the northeast, and you just figure out a way to get there. And that is something that a lot of people don't like. I think an apt comparison point would be Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, that I personally know a lot of people that don't like that general philosophy of, hey, go do these 4 things. That's the game. Figure it out. They want to be more guided. They get overwhelmed easily. They don't like that feeling of being lost and just kind of end up disconnecting, and they just don't keep playing. And I think that's something that could happen with Dragon's Dogma 2. You could end up in a situation where you have no clear objective, you're not sure what you're doing, you're not sure how to progress. The game intends for you to just talk to people and figure out where you want to go, but maybe you just don't like that, and that's fine. You should know that this game wants that from you. But also compared to something like Elden Ring and Zelda and even Skyrim, this game intends for that exploration to be a very big part of it. In Zelda or Elden Ring, your inventory is practically unlimited. You can have as many stuff to help you out as you want, you can stock up on things to go and fight something very difficult, and in Dragon's Dogma, things like your inventory limit is very important. Preparing for a trip is a big deal. You need to make sure you have camping supplies, because if you don't, how are you going to spend the night? If you don't spend the night and rest at camp, the night is very dark and very dangerous. Monsters are stronger at night. There's also mechanics that are very punishing if you don't prepare adequately, like how your maximum health can consistently decrease, and the only way to recover that chunk of health that kind of goes away is to rest. But camp supplies is very heavy, so you need to prepare your inventory with a good balance of resource management of how many times do you think you're going to rest on the way to your destination that you're not sure exactly how you're going to reach, and how many potions and weapons and what are you going to carry. And I'm pretty sure it's going to feel really bad for some people to prepare for a trip, have it go sideways, and feel like they wasted a lot of time. And that could be a huge sticking point for a lot of people. So I just want you to be aware of that. Another big sticking point is how much they've harped on missable content, which might be the thing that makes me the most excited about the game. They talk about how there's plenty of things in the game that are really big, impactful, important, but that are completely off the beaten path, not necessary for the main quest, completely missable. You could play the whole game and never see them. I love that, but some people think that if a game has cool stuff to show you, they should show it to you. Maybe not put it straight up front and center and say, please look at all the cool stuff we made, but at least easily hint at it and tell you, hey, maybe you should do this because there's cool stuff in that direction. It's important to note that some of that missable content is something that you can't go back and do, because this game only has one save slot and it does autosave. So there will very probably be things in this game that if you miss out on it, if you make the wrong choice, or if you do something in a certain order, you might just be locked out of it for that playthrough. So keep that in mind. I know a lot of people don't have a problem with this in Elden Ring, for example, but maybe you have a problem with it in general, so you should know that. This is a very particular game, and I think it's going to be a very special experience. It's also a game that, because it's shrouded in so much mystery, we don't know a lot of the stuff about it. We don't know the quests, the mysteries, the number of monsters, the type of loot. We just don't know so much. It's meant to be something you discover through. It's one of the reasons I'm very excited to play it on launch, because that's always exciting to me, to discover stuff with a community. But I don't want you to jump into this game on launch if some of the things I've talked about are huge red flags for you. And I feel like a lot of people have been kind of tricked into thinking that this game is different than what it actually is, when it is quite a unique game. A game that I think we should appreciate and love, and has the potential to be huge, to be not just a cult hit, but a huge hit in a similar way to how Dark Souls grew even bigger with Elden Ring. But that doesn't mean it's going to be for everyone, or that it's not going to be divisive. So I just thought you should know that. Like I said, I am 100% in on this game, and I think you should try it. But if there are red flags, wait for reviews. I've never supported pre-order culture. I'm not about to start now. And jumping in one day late isn't going to be the end of the world. On top of that, it's worth mentioning that this is a Capcom game, and that Capcom games frequently get discounted, especially when DLC or expansions come out. So you might have the opportunity to still get a feeling of that by jumping into the game later on, at a lower price and with more content. As much as I think that just the experience of discovery, to me, is worth the full price of admission of this game on launch day, it doesn't have to be for you. If this was intriguing to you and you feel like you want to give it a shot, if none of these things are red flags, if they actually make you more excited, or if they're things that you're willing to experience, go inform yourself more. You can go and watch other videos. I have made some. Don't need to watch mine, but it would be nice if you did. Be informed about the game before you decide to jump into it. I would love for you to get really excited and want to experience these things, but I don't want you spending your money on something that has a high likelihood of not being for you. Money is more difficult to come by every day these days, and $70 is a lot of money for a game that just might not be for you at all, that you're going to play for a couple of hours and be like, ugh, I don't like this. So hopefully this helps clear some of those things up. If this video did help you, did inform you of things, hit the like button. If you want to hear me talk more about video games, consider subscribing. If you're still not sure about that, I encourage you to check out the channel, and maybe one of my many other videos will earn your subscription. I've been Mug Thief. Don't let TikTok culture trick you into selling you a game as something that it isn't in a 60-second video. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you again very soon.